Or the name of
Bells.
Bells.
Bells or no?
So you just give us a little background and
Yeah, so, hello, everybody, Thorpe Bells. You may have known me from the last year of running for city commissioner. I am a resident of Fort Lauderdale, and I've been here for just going on about 8 years. And, I had a previous career in academia in the state of Kansas. I spent a lot of time in, state politics, working in health policy and management. So I'm excited to be here and be part of the process. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah,
well, welcome.
Thank you.
And you're the mayor's appointee.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, places, yeah. And then I learned today that Jeremiah Post or Carter, I mean, sorry. Has resigned as of today. So we now have a vacancy in District 3. And then there's a vacancy of District 1. John Ruster. So we're too short, correct? Two on the board right now. Okay. So with that, I'll do a roll call
Mr. Brown,
here.
Mr. Bells,
Here.
Mr. Buckelhammer, Mr. Camerata, Mr. DiGirolamo,
Here.
Ms. Lowe, Ms. Milroy, here, and Mr. Patel.
Here. Thank you. In your packet that was sent out, and then you should have in front of you a copy of the meeting minutes from the September 17th, 2024 meeting. Are there any comments or corrections or additions?
None here.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve. Seconded.
Oh, no, I think somebody else has to make the motion.
Or that motion, yeah, sorry.
I'll move it. Are you seconding?
Yes.
Okay.
All in favor, say it. Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to give any neighborhood input tonight?
No one has signed up.
Okay, thank you. Is there any old business? Okay. Under a new business, I'm going to turn over at this point to Laura.
Good evening. Yeah, this is our organizational meeting for the year. So this meeting, we will appoint a chair, a vice chair, and then the revenue estimating conference committee member. And those are just leadership positions where you're doing certain roles on behalf of the board. And that's nominated by the board. So how we typically do it is I start out and I ask for nominations for chair. And then if there's one or two, then we'll vote on both of them. Or all three of them, however many there are, and then I'll turn it over to whoever the new chair is and they'll take the rest of the agenda. So are there any nominations for chair?
Nominated Bill Brown.
Accept the nomination?
Accepted.
Okay, anybody else? Any other nominations? All right, so did we have a motion? Or would you want to move to, because there's not more than one?
I move that Bill Brown be appointed chair of the.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so now it's back to you.
Thank you. At this time, as the chair, thank you.
Congrats.
Take this position seriously. What's that?
Just scratch out vice.
True. Well, we want to save money, so.
We do these internally, Charmaine does these, so.
So with that, we need to elect a vice chair, as Laura said. And is there anyone concerned or would like to be considered? I can't make a nomination, but I can ask Melissa.
Nominated.
Good with you?
I mean, I'm fine with, I've got on the board, I just put a year time. Are you sure you're?
Everybody's fighting, let the record show, everybody's fighting.
Negotiated.
We're upper half of seniority in the board now. So. Okay, so if there's no other nominees, the chair will entertain the nomination of Mr. Norroy. Made by Brett. And then Norby seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay,
Good, congrats.
because we are the budget board, and we're really tight with dollars, there is no pay with this. position. I should have told you that before. Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about the work plan and
Do you
then,
mind doing the revenue estimate?
oh, that's right. In the past, for the last 2 or 3 years, Ross has been our representative on the revenue estimating committee that the city has, where they bring all the departments heads in, and they review the anticipated past revenue for the previous year and then the anticipated revenues. They kind of look at any new trends or where there's decreases, and then he comes back and will report that out to this board. That's what he's done in the past. So we need to select a person that would be interested in doing that. Even though he's not here, he has expressed an interest to continue, but if there's anybody.
Sounds great. Sure.
Okay,
If you're gonna show up. get
I
on
know,
it.
we're being voluntold.
so you have,
You need a motion to, or a second, you not made the motion,
Yeah.
I'll second it.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Right, good job.
At this point, I'm going to turn the agenda over to Laura. But before she does work plan, I know Norby, you have to leave at 5:45. So you want to do E and F real quick, cover those items.
Sure, so again, welcome to the new members. We have at least a few of you who haven't been through this training. We did the training a few years back when we had a new commission and there was a pretty large turnover on the board. We did an interactive board training, really talking about the concepts of like, what kind of funds do we have, how it all works before budget season kicks off. So we're gonna offer that again before the next budget advisory board meeting. Do we have 4 o'clock? So before your next meeting at 4 p.m. People who have been through it, you can come through it again. For new folks, it may be of interest. We'll spend some time in a casual format, talking about some of the ins and outs so that during budget development, you'll hit the ground running, understanding how it all works. So that's just an announcement. Charmaine will send out more information. Anything else you'd add, Yvette, for that?
No, and come with questions. Really, it's an interactive discussion, so the intent is to provide you with the information that you would like. We'll prepare some slides, high level, but we're ready to dig in with any questions that you have.
February 19th. February 19th at 4 p.m.
Yep, and bring your budget books too,
Here.
in this room,
Yes.
yeah. And directly before, we're trying to make it as easy as possible, so you could just travel here once. So that's that, and what else did you wanna go over?
The code of
Oh.
ethics.
Yeah, so this is just a reminder, we have some new members. This is new to everyone in the city. We have a code of conduct. And there's also the state of Florida Code of Ethics and Sunshine Rules. This has become, we've had more chatter in the community and more like reporting of folks, not on this board, but just in general, as this has become a thing. So especially if you belong to a homeowners association or you're a member of another board or committee, make sure you're really familiar with the code of conduct, because there's an expectation that when you come onto the board and discuss items, that you do it from a very neutral perspective. So you're not in your homeowners association talking about something that you're then going to vote about and bring a perspective that maybe isn't neutral. So I think you need to just choose where you're gonna discuss your item and probably choose one of your boards. It's okay if there's free speech, right? So you all can talk about things in your community at different boards. But if there could be a perception that you're not coming into this board from a neutral perspective, folks could feel, like you're violating the code of conduct. So that, I want everyone to, read it, be familiar, especially because this board talks about such a broad variety of issues. Please brush up on that. If you have any questions, you can ask us. We'll confer with the city attorney. It's new to us too, because it was just approved in this past year, so.
That's a new one, I didn't realize that.
The code of conduct, yes,
No,
new.
in the homeowners association, if you're a board member there that cannot discuss what may come up here.
Well, what it says in the code of conduct is you have to come here from a neutral perspective. And we have certain circumstances where members in other capacities, like advocate very strongly for something that is going to be discussed at a board that they'll be at. So I'm not a lawyer, I'm probably not the best one to explain this, but I think what we want to do is make sure you're aware of the code of conduct and that there is an expectation that when you're going to discuss something in this board, that you come to the board meeting to discuss it from a neutral perspective and where others don't feel like you're informed by other discussions.
I thought it would be two board
So-
members, not one.
The sunshine.
Oh, that's.
The sunshine, so yeah, yes, we have a lot of different rules to consider, but the code of conduct is a new one, so the Florida Sunshine has been around for a long time. But the code of conduct was only more recently approved by the city commission, which is the statement y'all have to sign, so. I mean, it's not really about the consequences, it's more about the expectation that that's how boards work together in the city. So just sending a reminder.
The way I heard it from the city attorney is that if there is a discussion, you just don't, it's hard, you should not vote or take a position on the record. If you're, especially if you're gonna be voting in a board
Right.
or at a committee meeting.
Yeah, just so everyone feels like they're being treated fairly when you all are making recommendations to the city commission.
Right now, a lot of people are walking on eggshells on this because it's new territory.
That was all. Charmaine sent some backup information in case you had questions. The city clerk does provide annual training with the city attorney on this. So if you're interested, you'll get information on how to attend that as well.
That would be in April.
In April. Okay.
Thank you for covering that. So that way we had the new board member here today that we had to leave.
Yep, you're welcome.
So we did those two agenda items. We can go to the FY 2025 Budget Advisory Board Work Plan and Priorities and Discussion. All right.
Oh, okay, yep, so in your packet, there is a document that looks like this. In this board, this is kind of our working plan for how we're going to address different issues. So we call it a work plan, but essentially, if there's something that comes up where maybe Melissa wants to talk about, park special events, we'll make sure that we put that, we'll say, oh, well, why don't we bring that up in April? And based on what we have planned, and then we ask the department to prepare information, and then we'll have that presentation and talk about it in that meeting. So this work plan just sort of guides the meetings we'll have and the topics that we discuss. Charmaine has done this for years, and so what she's done is she's populated this based upon dates that we know already for the budget process. In the later months, you'll see it really doesn't have items because we'll fill that in as we have conversations. So if there's something you talk about in this meeting, you want us to talk about it, we'll pencil it in, and then we'll ask the appropriate folks to prepare information. We want to make sure that as staff, we're really prepared to share with you researched information that's good information for you to make recommendations based upon, and that's why we do it this way. So is there anything I need to make sure I
Yeah,
capture?
on page 2,
Okay.
we want to use the opportunity to determine the dates for June and August.
Oh, yep, so the Budget Advisory Board is the only board that has standing joint meetings with the commission, and you do that 3 times per year. Understanding your standing meeting as a Budget Advisory Board sometimes works to be able to meet before that meeting, and sometimes it doesn't. This year, there's 2 meetings we recommend to be rescheduled so that you can have your meeting before you meet in the joint meeting with the commission. The first one is at the top of page 2, it's the typical meeting is June 18, 2025, but you'll be meeting on Tuesday, June 17. So you'll be meeting before, you'll be meeting with the commission before your normally scheduled meeting. So the 2 dates we're suggesting is either Wednesday, June 11th. That's actually the date I would recommend, or there's a Friday, so we could spend Friday together on June 13th.
I would suggest June 11th on
Okay.
Wednesday.
That work for you all? Okay, so, and then the second one is, in August for the same reason. And so the three replacement dates to consider would be Monday, August 11, Wednesday, August 13th, or Thursday, August 14th.
Let's stick with the Wednesday. I would agree with that. I'm here, you know, I'm in town.
Okay, so would somebody make a motion to change the June meeting to Wednesday, June 11th, and then the August meeting to Wednesday, August 13th?
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, thank you very much. And then that's it for the work plan. I would like to draw the new members' attention to the month of May. It might not look so big, but there's 3 meetings in the month of May and they're weekly meetings. So if you could make sure those are on your calendar, those are significant meetings from a department perspective, as you'll hear the budget submissions from each department, which is a large part of what you'll weigh in on. So if you could please try to make those dates. It's May 7th, 14th, and 21st. And one of those is your regularly scheduled meeting, and then we've added 2 additional meetings in order to cover all of our departments.
It's like, I know on the 14th travel. Are these meetings recorded?
Yeah.
We could follow up afterwards and post them. Okay.
They are, and actually, if you had questions, so if you do plan to be absent, you could send any questions you had from reviewing the materials through Charmaine, and she'll compile all the questions together and have the departments address the responses in the meeting, so then you could watch that in the recording as an alternative way.
I know August 19th, travel to, that's the joint commission workshop, same thing, is that recorded?
Yeah, so that's the public meeting,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
the
okay,
conference
okay,
meeting,
oh,
so,
okay.
it's not conference, it's before right
Okay,
before the conference
very good.
meeting, so that's that meeting with the commission.
Okay.
And those conference meetings don't count towards the attendance,
Correct. And neither do the budget review meetings,
except
only the normally scheduled one counts towards attendance requirements. The other 2 are special meetings, so they don't.
What is the requirement, the attendance?
Charmaine, how many absences can you have? And-
So it's 3, if you're absent 3 consecutive, that's an automatic off the board. Or if you're absent 4 times in 1 term,
From regularly scheduled,
regular
But
schedule.
if you said the special one, like the May 14th.
that would not count.
But the May 21st is a regular meeting as well as.
You're welcome. So that is all for that, unless anyone has any questions or anything right away you'd like to add to the work plan? Okay.
I'm assuming all the meetings will be here, even no conflict in the schedule of this
That
week.
is correct.
Okay, thank you.
The joint meetings will be at Broward Center.
Right. And there's the workshop, commission's workshop next week. I will be attending, but if any of the other board members would like to attend, it's not mandatory or anything, but it's very interesting to listen and participate in that, listening to staff and listening to the commission and getting their priorities, because based on that, we will come back and start rolling up our sleeves and working with staff and do what needs to be done.
There's not typically an opportunity for public input in those meetings because it's an opportunity for the commission to discuss priorities together. Those are also on YouTube, live and recorded, so you have a variety of options. You can be in person, you can watch it remotely live and watch it after the fact as well.
That's the commission priority setting
That's,
workshop
yeah,
next
for
week.
Tuesday, yeah.
The 11th.
So it started at 9, I think. It starts at 9 a.m. It starts it's like an all-day event. It
9 to
starts
3:30.
9 to 3:30.
Is it out at FXE?
Yeah.
Oh, it's here.
And I think they said this year they anticipated it to be longer for,
Yeah, we had some specific topics that they requested to discuss at the meeting, including like the EMS tax that you all have, the EMS district that you all heard about. They want to talk about City Hall. They want to talk about CRA board or the CRA extension versus non-extension, some heftier issues, so we expect it to go a little longer than normal, which is those issues. not-for-profits, yeah.
You got any more questions on the work plan? Talk about the grant program update presentation and we're
Welcome to Mika McGibbon, who is a senior analyst or principal analyst at the Office of Management and Budget. She's been one of our team members for many years, really helps us to organize the grants program, and she's gonna share.
Yes, and actually I'm gonna be tag teaming it
Yeah,
with.
y'all know Yvette Matthews as well. I've seen.
So this is the fun time of year. Before we start talking about how we allocate resources and resource scarcity, we get to talk about the money that's coming into the city for specific programs and initiatives. So it's our grant program update. So really, why are grants important to the city? It allows us to enhance the programs, and in a lot of cases, programs that we already wanted to do, but didn't have enough resources in order to move them forward. A lot of our big programs right now are around things like stormwater, where we have a stormwater plan in place. And it allows us to increase the funding that we're putting towards those capital projects. Another thing is public safety. This year, we've been extremely successful with our public safety grants, which have allowed us to add FTEs to the personnel complement while receiving financial support. So grants really allow us to target the things that are important in our strategic plan, in our commission priorities, without tying up general fund resources. And we usually target the things that are the highest priorities. So we look at the things like infrastructure, we look at things like the public safety related grants, and then we can put general fund resources towards things that grants usually don't cover, such as our annual maintenance related expenses, or even some of our neighbor services that grants, we have a challenge with getting grants for those items. So at the city, it's really a team sport. We have the commission that sets our priorities. We then have a legislative affairs group that handles sharing out any federal related opportunities. Our city manager in the Office of Management and Budget really serves as the coordinator for this process to make sure that the applications that we're submitting are in line with the programs that the city is really trying to pursue over the next year, and to ensure that we're not creating any compliance challenges associated with going after grants. So a good example is there are some grant programs that may be a $5,000 grant, and it may be nice for parks to have that opportunity because it would enhance a program. But if the reporting requirement associated with it would create more than $5,000 worth of obligation of staff time, we really want to be strategic and make sure that we're only going after the things that serve as an added bonus to the city. Our departments have grant writers within the department and grant administrators within the department. So our key departments that handle grants have those staff members. And so they handle it directly within the department, from the application writing, as well as managing the grant programs. We have resources where we can use consultants for grant writing, and we've done that in the past for some of our larger grants, but traditionally it's done in-house. So the grant oversight and communication process in the city, we start with a grant pre-application form. And that's where we look at, before anyone dedicates resources to submitting a grant application, we want to make sure it's aligned with, one, the things that we want to pursue, but also that we're all on the same page. And the reason this is so important is things like adding firefighters. It would be great to add them, but every time we add a resource, we also have to make sure we have the financial backing for once that grant is over. We want to maintain the staff. If we get a really robust piece of equipment, we want to make sure that we have what we need to, one, incorporate it in our activities, but also maintain it after the grant program is ended. So really, the pre-app process allows us to collaboratively work together to determine whether or not this is something that we want to pursue. It also allows us to have interdepartmental relationships. So sometimes one department is going after a grant, but we really need feedback from another department in order to get it across the finish line. So if TAM decides that they're going after a grant that would really enhance, landscaping and streetscaping, well, Parks is the team that actually ends up maintaining a lot of that. So we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page before we go after an opportunity. The commission approves every grant that is accepted by the city. So that it allows them to ensure that we're committing both the grant resources and any city-related match from a financial standpoint, as well as ensuring that they're aware of the commitment of staff resources that occurs with a grant application or a grant acceptance. Quarterly, we get together and we have FLSAT meetings, and that is our approach to continuous improvement. It's a forum where we address any challenges. We make sure that we're actually hitting our compliance requirements associated with grants, because every time you receive a grant, there's also a requirement for reporting that goes along with it. Once a year, we do a grants year-end review, which is the document that Charmaine sent out a little earlier this month. And then we have an annual single audit related to our grants program. And feel free to ask questions at any time. Yes?
Just a question, so like, when I was at the university, I worked on grants and managed our grants. We had an indirect cost, every grant had to have a 30%
Great
indirect cost.
question.
Do you guys, at the city level, do we have that for grants that has to go to the administration city, because like that would to the institution to, or keep the lights on?
Right, so we actually do, every year or every 3 years, we actually do look at our indirect costs related to city operations in general, but we also do the federal indirect costs to determine what our rate would be at the time. We do not use it. And the reason we don't is because the programs that we're going after are intended to enhance a specific city-related function. So the stormwater programs are really enhancing the infrastructure project associated with it. So we want to make sure that those resources are going directly to those programs. It's a thing that we've looked at a couple of times, but really this programs that we're doing are enhancements, or tend to be enhancements of what we already are trying to accomplish in-house. And so we don't want to take away funding from those programs in order to cover our administrative costs. So it's a strategic decision, and because those amounts wane from year to year. So one year, there may be a really robust program within the Parks Department. And as that sunsets, we don't have that as our driving force for the staffing that handles our grant management program. So really, we ensure that the grants are going directly to that source.
The entitlement funds, you want to talk about how they're slightly different?
Right, so there's one other pool, and Tamika will get to it a little later. We have entitlement funds, so they're not competitive grants, but we receive funding both from the federal government and from the state. They're primarily to go towards housing, low-income areas. And that entitlement funding, we do have a team that specifically manages it. It's a very complex program. And so we do, we don't really consider it an overhead rate. We direct charge the costs associated with running that program to those grants. And that's specifically for our entitlement program. That's our housing and community development program.
What's the name of that program that you're talking?
So there's a
About
group,
SHIP or-
it's the SHIP grant, CDBG, so
Okay.
yeah. So all of those programs, because it's a very specialized team that runs them,
Yeah.
we do apply.
This and-
Right, and the city does still offset the costs, so those grants don't have enough admin dollars in them to fully support the staffing for them. So the city does still provide funding, and I think it's almost $1 million a year in order to keep those programs going, to allow the dollars to go directly to the programs, but there are some administrative costs,
Sure.
some that can't be covered by the grant, but also some that exceed the admin dollars that are supported through the grant.
So are we competing with other municipalities for getting grants?
We are, so it's kind of twofold, right? There's some grants where our entitlement grants, we don't have to compete, it's based on a formula. But for our competitive grants, we are, for our infrastructure projects, we're competing across the country for other against other municipalities for those funding. There's some state grants in which we're competing against our neighboring municipalities for that funding. So we really try to be competitive, and often being competitive means that we're providing a match, right? So if we're asking for $1 million, we're saying, if you give us $1 million, we will also put $1 million towards this project. And because we're targeting things that we were already planning on doing, the match comes from this source associated with that project. So we received a $10 million stormwater grant. We already had $10 million programs for the grant. By getting that $10 million grant, we said we would match it with 10 million. We were gonna spend the money anyway. But now this allows us to spend $20 million on the project, and all the cost overruns that we hadn't quite planned for were covered basically by the grant. So it's those kind of opportunities that we're really targeting. We try to be very strategic about what we're going for. Sometimes we have grants where it could be transportation, it could be public works. And again, we try to be really strategic about which project we're moving forward because we want to position ourselves for success.
How do we compare with other municipalities in terms of being given the grant? Are we better than or same as?
Yeah, so we did some research a year ago just to see how other municipalities, and we are really well positioned. Part of it, though, is that we're really well positioned. This year, we got a really big fire rescue grant, so that kudos to the fire rescue team. The last few years, it's been that our stormwater infrastructure, we were implementing a stormwater bond program anyway, so we had the dollars to serve as a match. So we were able to be really competitive where other municipalities may not be able to put up as much of a match for these grants. So over the last few years, and you'll see a summary on Tamika's slides, but you'll see that we've really gone above and beyond where we were years ago. So, but it's again, just the programs that we're going after right now just happen to be bigger programs. So the dollars that we're seeing are pretty dramatic.
In this follow-up to that, at a recent city commission workshop, conference workshop, meeting, Daphne came in, who's the legislative affairs for the city, and brought in the 4 consultants that we use that talked about leveraging for state grants, and they have a good feel of which ones have a higher possibility of us receiving versus, and so they try to focus on those ones that they know that we have a better chance of getting, and that's where they might from year to year drop one proposal off and pick up another, because that's the flavor of the legislature for that year. Did I explain that correctly?
Yeah, so our lobbyists really work closely with us from legislative appropriations, but also for some of our grant applications. There are some that we need to have like letters of support from our regional representatives, and we include those in our larger grant applications. So our lobbying team really is integral and part of that. And they really try to share with us what's coming down the pipeline. So a lot of times it's not, these grant applications take an extreme amount of staff time to put together. And so if you know about them as early as possible, it gives you more of an edge on being able to prepare a really competitive application.
And then I had a question on the single audits. Are those the A133s?
Yeah,
So are those done in-house, or is that done by the city auditing team, or do they do outside?
it's part of our external audit package. So they do it in collaboration with our annual financial audit, but it's part of that package.
Any other questions for them?
Next slide, I think we have one more. And this one, Tamika, did I skip your thing? Okay, so this is just like a high level overview of the tools that we use for our grant search resources. So we actually have a subscription to grantfinder.com. It allows city staff to actually put in parameters for the grants that they're looking for, and then it will literally send them an email every day to say, hey, something just popped up that's related to this thing that you've asked for. We also use grants.gov, which is a federal resource. As a part of the Florida League of Cities, we have access to eCivis, which is another tool very similar to Grant Finder, where you're able to put in parameters and get alerts. This one's actually for free as part of our membership. And then every year, we do a grant resource guide. So we ask people to look forward for the next year and look at what they plan on applying for. This really allows us to start thinking through, are we going to actually need to engage a consultant to apply for a specific grant? Do we need to put more resources in to make sure that we're applying for the grant on time? So it's really more of a forward-looking document, and it allows us to communicate with the commission as well, because a lot of times they hear about opportunities and they're not sure whether or not we've actually taken them into consideration. All of the grants that we plan on applying for the year are actually included in that document. Of course, sometimes things pop up that, weren't planned for the year, but we try to at least look forward for the rest of the year to see what opportunities we're going to pursue. And I've kind of talked about this, our application strategy, go after the things that we're already prioritizing, use the resources that we already have to serve as a match. And then make sure that we're aware of the major conditions and the required deliverables. It's a really big part of grant management. We don't want to get a grant and have to pay the funds back. So it's really important to us that we're aware of the terms and conditions associated with it. And I'll turn it over to Tamika for the fun part of the presentation.
So we're gonna get to look at what we were awarded in 2024. So we wanted to go ahead and give you some highlights on the 2024 grants that were received. So one of the state legislature grants that you were talking about earlier, Mr. Brown, was the Education Enrichment Program. So we got that last year for $704,000. And this allowed for us to be able to do some after-school enrichment with some of the children. We had some summer youth programs as well. We actually also did 30 paid summer internships for some of our high school students so that they were able to get some work-based learning opportunities. We also got the $3.2 million renovation of Cooley's Landing. So that's actually a combination of 3 agencies that we received grant funds from. We got from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, from the Florida Inland Navigation District, and also from Broward County. And this actually is also supplementing our parks bond that we also have for the renovation of Cooley's Landing. We spoke about for public safety. So we received a grant for $750,000 for the COPS grant. And this is going to allow for us to have 6 full-time sworn police officers that will be added to the personnel complement. And this will be supported over the next 5 years. And then
That is a federal grant, right?
correct, it is. And then finally, of course, the SAFER grant that we received, we had that announcement that came out in October that we received $11.4 million for the SAFER grant. And this is going to allow for us to hire 28 firefighters. And we will be seeing that funding over the next 3 years.
And then the 4th year, that funds all their salaries, benefits, and equipment, personal equipment that they use on the job. Then 4th year, it's the city's responsibility to cover salaries.
So
Side-
it covers the majority. So because of our staffing model, even though we're getting funding for 28 firefighters, we're using those for the 3rd person on the rescue. So it's really lieutenants that we need to hire in order to really utilize
Sure.
the 28. So we supplement the difference between what the grant will cover and what will actually be their actual salaries. So
It's a timeline on the grant when they decide how to extrapolate it out over whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 10 years.
yeah, so
Why do you have to do 14 and 6? I'm not arguing any point either way, but
yeah.
I'm just 28 and 3 instead of 14 and 6, say, who makes that decision?
Yeah, so we decided how many to request and so we requested 28, we could have requested
Oh, understood.
any number.
Okay.
But the time period associated with it, the 3 years, is based on the federal requirements. So when these
Sure.
programs are funded by the feds, they actually put a timeline associated with the funding.
And I heard that the goal is to start they're in the process of hiring now.
Mhm.
To start sometime in February, is that correct, or April?
I think it's probably gonna be about it.
I thought it was
Right,
April,
April,
yeah.
February is like tomorrow. Crazy.
First, yeah.
So then taking a look at our grants, we wanted to show you the number of applications that we did put in for in 2024. So we applied for 50 grants for a total of 132 million. But when it comes to the number that were awarded, we were awarded 38 grants for an amount of 22,151,000. So some of those that we were awarded in 2024, we did apply for them in prior years. So there might be some that we actually have that we have applied for in 2024 that we're still awaiting some response on to see if we're gonna be awarded those grants.
All in one month.
No problem, have a great one. And then looking at where the source of our grants were that we were awarded. So of the 38 grants, 9 were federal grants that we received for a total of $14 million. State grants, we received 23 of those at 5.3 million. County grants were 3 grants that we received from Broward County for 2.2 million. And then private grants, we had 3 grants that totaled $509,000. And as you can see, we also have where Yvette mentioned about the grant match. We show those grants that we actually, the amount of grant match that we also have matched from the city in order to have been awarded these grants. So actively, when we take a look at our grants portfolio, so our active grants portfolio, we are actually managing $136.1 million. 40% of that is from our entitlement grants from the Housing and Community Development Division. We also have the fire rescue, we have $11.9 million, so the SAFER grant is a part of that amount that is there as well. And Public Works, as you can see, we have $38.5 million that we've received in grants for Public Works also. But we are currently managing $136.1 million in grants.
Is that a fairly, I mean, is that a record or?
It is a record for us. So usually it's around $100 million. The SAFER grant kind of took us over the top this year, but usually at any given time, we usually say there's about $100 million.
You have a heavy workload.
We do. And then of course, our entitlement grants. So this is just giving you a summary over the past 5 years of the entitlement grants that we have received. So in 2025, when we're looking at CDBG, it's a little less than $1.5 million that we were awarded. Our home grants is at $631,000. The Hopper grants, which is the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, we're receiving $8,063,000. And then for our SHIP grants, that's $1,482,920. As you can see that in 2021, we do have the asterisk that was there that showed that we weren't appropriated any funding for the SHIP program at that time.
And the important thing there is these are based on formula allocation, so it's based on, it's not that we applied for these grants specifically based on meeting certain population requirements, income requirements. That's how we receive that funding. Any questions?
I'm just wondering, 'cause that was my initial question, and you kind of addressed it in the broader, but so in year 4, let's take the fire. So are those positions that they're not filled right now, that you're getting the funding now? And then in year 4, it's technically sort of already budgeted because you just have the personnel right now?
So what ends up happening is that in year 4, we started building into our financial model the $4.6 million obligation associated with those positions. So when we are accepting grants that include personnel, it's not that, in a lot of cases, it's not that we had planned for those personnel already, but we build in the year in which the grant ends to continue to maintain them, which is why before anyone submits an application, we try to look at what the financial impact is, because 4.6 is a pretty big number. But if it was something that we have strategically decided that we're trying to add third person to a rescue, and this will allow us to accelerate that program. So the city manager made a decision that this was something that we really should pursue. And so then we just start building it into our financial models as well.
No, I think it's great. I'm just thinking like when we start really doing budget and you've kind of put out that.
The 10-year.
Yeah.
Yes.
Long-term.
We'll start to see that in.
Yes.
2028.
Yeah, so you'll see it in there, and Stantec usually does a really good job of highlighting some of those key changes. And so that's when you're going to see this year, a key change would be we're adding and from the first year, it's like $1 million contribution. And by the time we get to year 4, it becomes 4.6 million a year.
And with Sandtex, building those out, there's a lot of assumptions in those. And when you get past, 3 years, it's trying to determine increases of possible assessed values, what's the housing market, what's the new development of the community happening 3 and 4, it's really hard to predict, and it's been good the past few years.
Yeah.
But right now, who knows what's with the condo
gonna
market
happen.
being down and
Right.
sales and what's gonna happen, so.
Yeah, so we do some estimation in terms of growth, but the good thing is a lot of the programming that we do, we kind of have an idea of what year it's going to come online. So like these additional firefighters, we know what year based on this agreement. A lot of the contractual agreements that we have, escalators that may come up into play on those years. So we really build into the model things like the Las Olas Marina or Bahia Mar, like all of those big projects that we have in the pipeline. Our estimates, of course, once you get 3 years down, anything could happen. But we try to build all of those things into our modeling as well. Any other questions? Yeah.
I just want to commend staff, having attend many conference meetings and city commission meetings. When the commission asks a question when it comes to finance and the budgets and everything, I mean, you're right on there, spot on to give them the information they need. It's very impressive to see how quick staff reacts, so it shows that you're staying on top of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamika. Thank you.
Okay. Laura, is there anything under new business?
Did I miss anything? No?
No, I think we.
This will be the easiest meeting you have all year probably, so. Oh.
So don't think
Take-
out of my chair.
Yeah, don't,
that we're-
this is it.
Okay, and we have no communication going to city commission. Correct.
This, that would be your opportunity if there was anything you wanted. Okay, yeah, and speaking of 10-year revenue sufficiency, that will be next month. We'll get to hear about that.
And then you'll inform Ross that he's selected.
Yes, I emailed them earlier today to see if he would be willing if he was selected, and he said yes, so I'll let him know the good news right away.
Are there any other board comments? Anything again from the staff? I would encourage, what was it, last year, there were some comments made at a commission meeting from the general public about them not knowing much about the budget process. But these are YouTubed and put online.
Well, they haven't been. You all asked at the last meeting for us to start posting them online. So the clerk's office indicated they could. But there was always a conflict with this in planning and zoning, so
Yeah,
they're not.
They're not going to
live.
carry it
Yeah.
live, correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
But they were able to, they could provide a link. So they-
And they're always open to comment.
This budget?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Over there. Thanks. Yeah. Well, we're just about ready to adjourn.
I thought it started at 6, am I wrong?
It's 5 to 7. So this happened to be a shorter meeting.
Apologize.
Extra like, yeah, 2.
That's the proposed, that's the adopted.
Oh, okay.
So Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay. Motion to adjourn has been, I don't think it takes a vote for just a.
Nope.
Okay, we're
Adjourn.
Carl. No, second.
Oh, sorry.
good.
Sorry.
If you- Laura, you can go over any.
Yeah, I will. Well, hi, Carl, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
So, yeah, it starts at
Is there,
5 to 7. It's which is fine.
The worst thing is I could have been here.